Dane Brugler, who's a local guy.
Our guy.
Is every year, he's one of the best guys that does mock drafts, and he puts out a thing every year called The Beast. I called it The Monster for some reason before the break. Beast, Monster, it's similar.
Close enough.
Same thing.
Close enough.
Where he breaks down basically everybody who's anybody that's going to be in this draft. I don't know how many total prospects he puts in there, but
it's absurd.
It's
crazy.
I was actually just scrolling through
It's
it now.
over 500 reports.
yeah, and Dane really, over the last few years, has really blown up. He's gotten bigger and bigger. He writes for The Athletic, of course, now, and he does a great job. He knows these prospects as well as anybody.
And we had the conversation a few weeks ago. Somebody asked, like, do NFL teams take mock draft seriously?
Yeah.
I can tell you, there's some that and Dane is one of them, that teams at least
Pay attention to.
they pay attention to.
Yeah.
Because of all the work that he puts in, because of all the networking, and he does talk. Like,
right.
if you and I put out a mock draft, I don't think anybody cares.
No.
If Dane Brugler's putting out a mock draft, Mel Kiper, teams pay attention.
McShay, maybe.
McShay, 100%.
Daniel Jeremiah, McShay, and Brugler.
They're at least paying attention.
Yeah, the big names that we know.
Yes.
Obviously not the random mock draft.
And Brugler's coming on next Thursday. So a week from today,
Yeah.
Dane Brugler will be joining us right here on UCSS.
Which is great.
1 week from the draft.
I got to sneeze, so somebody talk for a second.
So Dane put out The Beast. If you guys haven't seen The Beast, go check it out. Highly recommend it. It is in-depth intel on not only his top 100 prospects, top 10 at each position, quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive lineman, offensive guard, center, you name it, Dane's got it, including specialists. And one thing I kind of took away from looking through The Beast, tied into something we talked about yesterday. And Jason, you weren't here yesterday, but we talked about Peter Schrager's intel-based mock, right?
Yeah.
And he had the Browns in this intel-based mock.
Yeah.
Taking Spencer Fano, the offensive lineman from Utah.
Yeah.
Now, prior to that, I hadn't really considered Fano even as really a candidate at 6 for the Browns.
Yeah.
But after reading what Schrager said, after hearing Zach Jackson talk about some of the guardrails age-wise, and then hearing Brugler, who has Fano as his number 1 offensive lineman in this draft, because of his versatility, he's not sure he's a left tackle, he's not sure he's a right tackle, not sure if he's a guard or a center, but the fact that he's played all three at a high level, I'm not saying that's who I would pick. I'm not saying that's who the Browns will pick.
Right.
But I think it's a name that I think we have to seriously consider based off how highly guys like Brugler, how highly guys like Schrager and some of the other guys are now valuing Fano. It kind of just reaffirmed
I find it hard to believe that you would draft a guy at 6 where you're not sure what his position is.
I tend to agree with that.
If
you're taking a tackle at 6, more times than not, or if you're taking a lineman at 6, more times than not, it's a left tackle.
Right.
It's almost always a left tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, the only guy I could think of was the guard that the Colts drafted.
Quentin Nelson.
Right. Who's been a great player.
Yeah. And he was worthy.
But that's a rarity.
Now, Fano did play tackle in college. Both he started a full year as a left tackle.
If you're taking him at 6, you're committed to him at left. On this line, I would think you'd have to be committed to him at left tackle.
I can't think of the life of me who I heard say this yesterday, but somebody was comparing him to Joel Bitonio.
Fano?
Yes.
Fano, yeah.
But Joel Bitonio was a great player, but you wouldn't draft Joel Bitonio at 6?
6.
He was a second-round pick, right, Joel?
Yeah, he's 39th.
He's
39th overall. 2 other things real quick up from the Beast. There you see Fano's all stuff. He was an All-American. He won the Best Lineman in the Country award. Played both left tackle, right tackle. Took reps at the combine at center.
Yeah.
Carnell Tate, I think it's now he's the number 1 receiver in this draft. All the scouts have come to the consensus that it is Tate, step down, Lemon,
we don't
Tyson.
Know scouts feel.
The guys who do these rankings. And then last but not least, in terms of the other positions, the best available. We're gonna have Matt Miller on the show tomorrow. We taped the interview yesterday. It's gonna air tomorrow. I asked him what's the worst case scenario for the Browns if Tate and the top tackles off the board at 6. Sonny Styles, David, like a defensive player, best player available, is going to be a defensive guy if Tate and Love and the offense are off the board.
I'll tell you what, guys.
I'm just saying that I think is now at least in play.
I'll tell you, I have zero problem with the Browns taking a defensive player, as crazy as that seems.
I've said it all along.
And here's or Jeremiah Love, and here's why. Because we've become so obsessed with what are the Browns' holes right now. Now, the truth is that you said this before. The Browns are rebuilding, right?
Yeah.
Are the Browns?
Well, they want to admit it or not, they are.
Are the Browns likely to be a playoff team in 2026?
No.
Okay. If you had to bet right now, are the Browns likely to be a playoff team in 2027?
Probably not, but
You never know.
Higher odds.
But
much higher odds.
Right, but you bet no over yes if you had to.
I bet no over yes, but probably closer than you think.
So, to me, need should not matter that much as more than a tiebreaker. Because if Sonny Styles is going to be the next, and now you could say, well, the Browns don't know what they're doing. They can't pick the right guy. And maybe that's true. Often they have not picked the right guy. But you can only go by what the guy believes. And if Andrew Berry is making the picks, and he believes, and I'm just using Sonny Styles as an example, that Sonny Styles is going to be an all-pro for the next decade. But Spencer Fano or Carnell Tate are going to be good NFL players.
Yeah.
You take the guy who's going to be a superstar.
I totally agree.
And it doesn't matter what position he plays. Why? Maybe I'd feel a little differently if the Browns were on the verge of us being a Super Bowl team. But the fact that they're probably, best case scenario, going to be a contender in 3 years, I don't know what my biggest need's going to be in 3 years.
Fair.
But if I'm convinced one guy's going to be great and the other guys are going to be good, the position doesn't matter.
We talk about blue chip talent in the draft, right? How many blue chip players are on the Browns right now on their current roster? Miles, Denzel, Schlesinger. I think you could put in that category.
I got to do it for more than 1 year for me.
Okay, so
he's on the way.
So we're taking out any of the rookies then.
For me, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I got to see it. Yeah.
Is it just those two? Is there any other legit blue?
No.
On the roster?
Yeah. If we're going under the assumption that any rookie has to do it at least 2 years to be considered a legit blue chipper, then they have two.
Yeah.
You know what you're not doing with just two blue chip talent players on your team?
Winning.
Yes.
That's right.
So if that is the case, if you can add another...
Even if we give you Schlesinger, that's still three.
And I don't think...
Quinshon's not blue chip.
Fannon's too early to...
Fannon, I don't think he's blue chip. I think he could be, but he's not. I'm not ready to say that yet. Mason Graham, good player, but I'm not ready to say blue chip.
So even if you're given three...
Yeah.
That's half of what you need, if not even less of what you need to win a Super Bowl. To win at the highest level.
You need more depending on if your quarterback's blue chip.
True.
You don't need as many.
That's fair.
But if you don't, then you need a lot.
A defensive end, a cornerback, and a linebacker. You have none on offense.
None. Nobody close.
At
really.
some point, you do have to assemble just talent because to your point, you're not ready.
Yeah.
On that same vein, the Browns hosted Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon, yesterday in the top 30. Because they also held Casey Concepcion, the other guy who was mocked them in the Straker mock.
Sadiq considered the best tight end in the draft.
Tested through the roof.
Yeah.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
Fastest 40 for a tight end ever. He jumped crazy high. The broad jump, athleticism, unquestioned, undeniable. The production there, but you'd like to see a little more production. At 20, not at 6. Absolutely not at 6, but at 24, if they think he's a better prospect than the other receivers, but would you be in favor of them taking 100%. Sadiq at 24?
I am all about the only time I deviate from best player available is quarterback could make me deviate because obviously I'll take a quarterback that's a 9 over another position that's a 10.
Yeah.
And if you thought that Sonny Styles was just a hair better than Carnell Tate, well, then I'm going to go with the position. If it's tied, if he's just an ounce better, but if there's any significant difference at all, I'm always going for the best player, because you talked about the blue chip guys. In 3 years, let's say the Browns' best chance to win is 3 years from now.
Okay.
Are Denzel and Miles going to be blue chippers in 3 years? I don't know.
Miles maybe. I have a hard time believing Denzel still is.
Right.
Now you may have.
Miles is going to be what, 33, 34? Is he still the best pass rusher at 34? I don't know.
I'm just not writing off Miles.
I'm not either. I'm just saying it's a fair question.
It's absolutely a fair question.
So I may draft a guy who maybe I don't desperately need the guy, but first of all, in defense you play a lot of guys anyway.
Yeah.
It's never a bad. There's never a spot where you don't have a spot for a generational talent on defense. It's not like outside of quarterback
or offense.
Outside of quarterback, that's the only spot.
We talked about in the first hour, it's just the bad luck, bad timing, whatever. The positions that the Browns need, the last two drafts have not had those.
That's right.
At the top, you can only pick in the aisle where the groceries are available.
Well, if you consistently take position of need over best player, you're going to consistently be bad.
Yeah.
And the holes you think you're filling, you don't fill because the guy's not good enough. And I'm not saying that's the case with Carnell Tate or these offensive linemen. I don't know in the weeds enough to know that that's the case. But if they're convinced that one of these defensive guys is head and shoulders better than the offensive lineman or Carnell Tate, then you're doing the wrong thing. As much as you get yelling and screaming from people like me, you're doing the wrong thing by doing that.
So in the Beast, we'll go back to Dane Brugler's rankings where they'll start.
Yeah.
He had Sonny Styles as his 4th best overall player.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs as his 5th best overall player. Fano is 8th, and Tate's 10. Are those close enough in your mind to where you would go the receiver?
I certainly think you would consider it. Now, is what's the drop off, right? Like I could say, well, there's not a huge difference between the 4th best quarterback and the 10th best quarterback, but there is, right? So what's the drop off from 4 to 10? It's not just about the number you're at.
It's hard to compare a defensive player to a receiver or a lineman, but it really comes down to conviction and belief. And I came back from the owners' meetings from everything that I had been told. Like Tate's good. He's a good receiver. He'll help whatever team he goes to.
Yeah.
He's gonna make them better.
Yeah.
Is he an elite franchise game breaker that has come out of Ohio State in the past? Probably not.
Yeah.
So
that's
now,
the consensus, by the way.
Well, now you have to weigh that against someone who may be an elite game
Who is the comp? I've been using Sonny Styles. Who's the comp for Sonny Styles? Who's the NFL comp for him? Do we have one?
I don't know.
He's a bit of a unicorn.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about Caleb Downs? What's the comp for him?
Shorter Kyle Hamilton.
Okay, so he's one of the best safeties in the league. He's elite.
He's legitimately
How many times has
yes.
he been an All-Pro? Kyle Hamilton.
Multiple.
Okay. Would you rather have, if you had to pick at 6, you take in Kyle Hamilton? They're both rookies, but you have a sense of what they're going to be. You taking Kyle Hamilton or you taking T. Higgins?
Depends on how quickly you're trying to win.
I would probably take T. Higgins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Kyle Hamilton's a better football player than T. Higgins is.
Yeah. But T's not bad.
No.
T is a very good wide receiver. Yes. Kyle Hamilton's an elite safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you'd rather take, and that could be the comp here for these two guys.
When you put in the value of the receiver position versus the value of the safety
especially
position,
for the Browns.
But just league-wide, though.
What if it was a pass rusher equivalent to Kyle Hamilton?
Like David Bailey, you're saying?
Yeah.
And, I don't know, Bailey.
Is Bailey Micah Parsons? Or is that too high?
No. Parsons is closer to what Sonny Styles was coming out. But Bailey's more of a hand in the dirt, like an actual edge rusher.
Right.
Not great against the run, but like a Brian Burns.
Okay, he was a top 10 pass rusher. Yeah. Maybe Trey Hendrickson?
Yeah, Hendrickson is more athletic, Hendrickson, but that's a good comp. Good pass rusher, not great.
So would you rather have Brian Burns or T. Higgins?
Team dependent. Like right now with the Browns, I like my other options on the outside. I think Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire have some upside.
Right.
I'd rather have T. Higgins to then help you make an evaluation on whatever we're doing at quarterback to see if you can move forward. But if you told me, hey...
Well, I don't think you draft a guy to get an evaluation on your quarterback. No, but I'm saying
it helps you kind of understand what you have because he actually has weapons. But if you wanted to say, I'd rather have the better pass rusher than the receiver, in totality, in a bubble, I get that.
Well, would I rather have a top, like let's say Sonny Styles, the comp is Micah Parsons. You'd rather have Micah Parsons than T. Higgins, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay. That's the difference there.
Yes.
And that's the difference there.
The conversation that they're probably having in buildings all across the
NFL. If the Browns think Sonny Styles is Micah Parsons, and it's never this simple, but just to make it easier for people to understand.
And real quick, it's Parsons as a prospect, not Parsons what he turned into. Parsons was not supposed to be an edge rusher when he came out. He was an off-ball linebacker. Sonny Styles is an off-ball linebacker.
Okay.
He transitioned into
so if he could be the next Parsons and Tate's going to be the next T. Higgins, and again, T. Higgins is a very good player. Was the 33rd pick in the draft. He could probably be a number 1 receiver. He wouldn't be elite number 1 guy like Jamar Chase, but he'd be a number 1 on a number of teams, and that'd be fine. But if you're doing a draft, take T. Higgins. You're not picking him 6, probably.
No.
You'd pick Micah Parsons 6.
Absolutely.
So that's it. Would you rather have the elite pass rusher or the very good wide receiver?
It's a lot of its projections. What do you think a player's ceiling is?
You say Micah Parsons versus Jamar Chase. I'm taking Jamar Chase every time. Right?
Yeah.
And there is like the positional value. We could all make our own.
Yeah. Right. Sure.
Of what's more important than others. Yeah. But I always go back to look what the league is paying the top 10 at this position versus this position. Receiver's the 3rd highest paid position in the NFL right now in terms of the top 10 average salary for those players.
Behind quarterback and edge rusher.
Yep.
And then what? Tackle?
And then tackle's 4th.
Yeah.
Those are the top 4. Receivers 3, the gap between receiver and edge rusher is close. If you can get a premium player, whether it's a Higgins or a Chase, you'd much rather have, I'm not arguing you'd rather have, I'm just saying, on a rookie contract at that position, like, that shouldn't be what makes the decision at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I do think that plays a little bit of a factor into you looking at, is this guy more valuable to us long term than another position where it's just a cheaper position to get a guy at a premium contract that early?
That's true.